एक मिनट रुक जाओ, रेडी होने दो। चलो ये कर लेते हैं। दिस कुड बी अ ग्रेट इंट्रो।
Hi, I'm Akshay.
Hi, this is Saurabh, and you are listening to the Founder Thesis podcast. We meet some of the most celebrated startup founders in the country.
And we want to learn how to build a unicorn.
Hi, I'm Vidit.
Hi, I'm Shridhar, and we are the founders of Loconav.
In the Indian startup ecosystem, the last 5 years and I would say the next 5-10 years are all about fixing plumbing. What do you mean by plumbing? For example, payments is plumbing. Getting money from one party to another party through various pipes, and something like a UPI built a better pipe to fix this plumbing issue. The other big plumbing issue facing the Indian economy is logistics. We are traditionally a country which has much weaker physical infrastructure, be it roads or railway or shipping, than advanced countries. However, I believe that just like we did it in telephones, like we in a way skipped the whole landline part of the journey and went straight to mobile telephony. Similarly, we will be able to overcome these physical limitations of our infrastructure by using machine learning, AI, IoT devices to make logistics more efficient. And today I'm speaking to Shridhar and Vidit, who are the founders of Loconav, which is one of the pioneering companies in this field. Here's Shridhar and Vidit talking about their days together at ClearTax and how that led them to become co-founders in Loconav.
When at ClearTax, we didn't know each other as well, except as colleagues, and then once or twice we went for meetings as Vidit described. But we had a third colleague called Rishabh, who I was very close to at ClearTax, and then he was also friendly with Vidit. So I think that's what then led to like a brainstorming session, and in fact just around the time when we were leaving ClearTax, that's when I got to know Vidit better. Otherwise, through most of the journey in ClearTax, it was more very professional. And it was Rishabh who was actually the connecting factor. So then the three of us left ClearTax,
But what was the idea that you left with?
So when we left, I think there wasn't any idea, honestly. Yeah, it was just that.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, let's get out and figure it out. Like there were a bunch of things going on in our head, and but I think the one thing that intrigued us was digitization for SMBs. So we were looking at lots of
because ClearTax was also in that space only in a way. Like they were also digitizing SMBs, tax filing.
In front of us. Yeah, while we were there, there was more action around personal tax filing, and then either directly or through enterprise partnerships or banking partnerships. Now, of course, it's a very different business where I think enterprise is probably key.
GST made that pivot happen.
Correct. But it was slightly different back then. But when we left, I think there was just general intrigue around digitization for SMBs, B2B. So thinking like across the board, lots of different ideas, like very very wide variety of sectors, including education, etc. Someone we were speaking to told us, hey, you should check out transportation, and in also in our journey of meeting lots of different types of SMBs, we came across a few fleet owners. So I think that then led us to we found their business a lot more complex than a typical trader or a wholesaler, right? Where all the everything that was required was in the place of business. But in the case of a fleet owner, right, everything was out there on the road, all the liabilities, the driver, and all the stress factors for the business owner, right, leading to greater lack of visibility. So I think that intrigued us, and we went deeper into meeting more fleet owners to understand, where were their struggles, what were some of the areas that they needed support in. And initially, during our conversations, the one thing that sort of stood out was, and maybe we went in also with some preconceived notions, was around the whole freight marketplace opportunity, right? So we started a pilot under the name of a company called Baba Trucks, right? Trying to build a freight marketplace, aggregating demand, supply. So the three of us split responsibilities. Someone was building supply, someone was building demand. Then we used to meet in the evening in a hotel room and sort of try to match that on the phone.
Okay.
So,
But
for
what is the demand here? There's like corporates who say
yeah,
factory say go
for
down, yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
either corporates or large transporters. So actually, while building the freight marketplace, we realized that okay, there's this other opportunity which is actually like a much more low-hanging technology problem, which is relevant to everyone, right? Not just to truckers who don't have access to business, but anyone with or without access to business, and even outside the trucking community, other commercial vehicles, taxis, buses, tractors, earth movers, right? Everyone had this standard problem of, hey, I need to know where my vehicle is, I need to know what it's doing, I need to know how much fuel is spent. I think as at some point the freight marketplace opportunity did not continue to excite us as much, and then we slowly started pivoting towards that. So we were in between Bangalore and Calcutta, then we moved base to Delhi, and that's when we started working on this, right? That okay, how do we build sort of great fleet software for all these folks who need to know where the vehicle is, right?
With it, I want to hear from you. Like, what made you relate to this audience? Like, I mean, like this is not an audience that you would have ever interacted with. What made you want to solve for them?
See, like I would say two things. So first of all, I think somewhere down the line, since both of us, families have been in business, and truck was logistics was something which was always a problem. Uh, so it was something which was, we have been hearing. ऐसा नहीं है कि something जिससे बिल्कुल अलूप थे. I think secondly, that realization, some things, the dots when you connect, right? So I think we always used to hear that if 50 paisa of diesel price increases, so हल्ला हो जाता है देश में, right? So but there was never this question क्यों होता है, right? मतलब a car runs for probably 10,000
दूध का
kilometers,
प्राइस
right?
बढ़
It's
जाता है, ब्रेड का प्राइस बढ़ जाता है,
right,
जस्ट बिकॉज
correct.
डीजल का प्राइस बढ़ा. हाँ.
But then specifically for fuel, right? It's probably private car runs not even 10,000 kilometers in a year. That's 5,000 rupees. But for a trucker, right, it used to be everything. And then, if you take a derivative, then it's probably everything. Everything that you're eating, everything that is around you came through a truck or any commercial vehicle. Or if someone is moving from point A to B. So when you connect those dots, right, then it's like it's so huge. It's almost everything. And uh, if you build a software, and typically a truck would run for cost would be probably somewhere between 35-40 rupees per kilometer, and you're talking about a lakh kilometers in a year. So now you're talking about spending 40 lakh rupees a year. And if you can optimize that, if you can optimize, let's say, 4 rupees in that, right? So then the halla would be at least 8 times, than the fuel diesel prices. So so I think that thought, at least gives a scale of the problem and scale of the opportunity.
What was like the product vision? Like, was it just like a software to manage your fleet and have a nice dashboard which helps you to take good decisions? Was that the vision, or what was the vision like?
So I think yeah, sorry. So when we started building Loconav, um, we knew the market was price sensitive, but we obviously didn't know the extent to which it was. It was the first time we were also doing B2B software. So the idea always was that like Vidit said, that if it's a product that's bringing them ROI, where they're seeing savings, where it's helping them do decision making around around cost management and helping them control fuel costs, etc. Why there shouldn't be any reason why folks will not pay for this technology, right? And at that time when we launched the product, the market was full of these old school solutions or these US based companies that were charging obnoxiously high prices, right? Which is also one of the reasons why penetration was fairly low. I think when we started, the idea was, how do you democratize access to this, right? And at some point, if it's free, sure. How do you democratize access to drivers, to fleet owners, even those who cannot afford this technology? We'll figure out how we can sort of bundle it with other services and make it affordable for them.
If you like to hear stories of founders, then we have tons of great stories from entrepreneurs who have built billion-dollar businesses. Just search for the Founder Thesis podcast on any audio streaming app like Spotify, Gaana, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to the show.
What was the product you wanted to make? Like, was it like a routing software, or what was it exactly? Like, for listeners who are not from that great industry, help them understand the product. What was it that you wanted to build?
Right. The product was in the beginning was quite straightforward. Nothing fancy about it. That, hey, you're a fleet owner. You need to know where your vehicle is. You need to know what it's doing. You need to know how your driver is driving. You need to know how, what kind of consumptions happening in your vehicle. So putting in an IoT device that was capable enough to capture all of that and giving them that visibility real time on an insightful dashboard, right, which was easy to use. Even though most of the fleet owners or fleet managers, were very, very new to technology or to using smartphones. So it had to be very, very intuitive, user friendly. And that's honestly all that we focused on. That build great visibility software for these fleet owners, so that they stop calling their drivers for 8 hours a day, and focus on other aspects of their business. Life becomes easier for them, and then over time, once you have this technology deployed in a large number or a large network of commercial vehicles, then of course, then the customers also, the users also hooked on. They're also used to using that technology daily, and then you can of course start giving them deeper insights, better reports, start encouraging them to deploy different types of sensors which give them more information about the vehicle, diagnostics, etc.
Okay, like upsell opportunities.
Correct. So the initial goal was keep it simple, give them a good basic visibility tool, and just get this out there in the hands of thousands of fleet owners. So.
Hardware is something which you obviously had zero experience of. I mean, Vidit was a coder, so how did you figure out the hardware piece? And because I mean, that would have been like a fairly new problem for you to solve.
So I think if I talk about products, right? So you'll find so many products where the first problem is to get users to start entering data into the product, right? So for, I would say, lots and lots of products, that's the core problem. How do you engage, start engaging them? I think data is very important. Like people have to post photos on Instagram, right? Otherwise it's useless. So for us, that wasn't a problem. If you look at the other side, brighter side of the product, is that there's always data which is coming to us, right? So we are somewhere like, let's say, Datadog, right? Datadog is a company as big as Twitter, right? Uh, yeah, you haven't heard of them, right? But what essentially they do is, they build this layer of monitoring over servers, right? So where essentially server is an IoT which sends all the data back to Datadog, and they can build logging solutions, application monitoring solutions. But there's always availability of data to them, right? So that's not, now the data could come from anywhere. So data could come from your own hardware, could come from a third party hardware. So it essentially becomes irrelevant after let's say, have some critical mass. Initially no one knew about Loconav, so you had to go and put your own hardware. But then, slowly, steadily, there were vehicles which already had a hardware. So we started getting that data on our platform, and now probably we support almost 2,000 different kinds of hardware out there globally, supported by Loconav, right? So we built that layer, that protocol layer which could talk to all these devices, and we kept, we still keep on increasing that number. That's a very crucial KPI for us, right? Uh, so, like how Android works seamlessly with almost every OEM that is out there, right? So think of us like that. And since now, if I talk about the product, then data is always there, right? That's wo vardaan hai हमारे पास, right? That data will always be there. But uh, now there's infinite possibilities. Infinite possibilities. So I'll tell you how. A small example I'll give you. So you're constantly getting this feed of lats and longs, right? Where your truck is going. But that data, when you top it up with some more data, let's say you say that here a transaction happened on fuel. So now you know that it's a petrol pump, right? And so that simple information can now, you could, geotag the petrol pump. You could know what the fuel price at that point of time is. You would know, what's the TAT around the petrol pump, how big is the queue, how much time people are taking to, fill fuel there, right? Similarly, talk about tolls, and you could start creating insights where you would say that I'm very sure that this truck went to fuel pump 3 times in the trip, and you start asking them, nudging them for more data, right? So see, that's the advantage that we have on our platform, and it keeps evolving, right? So you keep getting more and more feeds. So you also now put a camera on the on the vehicle, right? So you start getting feeds around, not just the location but also the image, right? So you could see where the stop at sign is. You could see where what is the speed limit. You could see if the driver is changing the lanes. There's also a camera which faces the driver, so you could see if he's drowsy. And you end up creating, so you're not scrutinizing the driver, you end up helping him, right? So you're telling him, uh, there's ADAS opportunities. How do you make roads safer for everyone, not just the driver? So, and then feeds around, you hand him a card. There's a toll tag that sits on the vehicle, so it's also IoT in some sense. Giving you back all the data around tolls. So you keep getting all this data, all this feed all the time with each and every product that you launch. We also launched an app which sits on the driver's phone. So all the stimulus that the driver takes, starting a trip, ending a trip, so stuff like that. We started
Maybe scanning the petrol bill or
correct,
stuff like that.
absolutely. E-way bills, and so for us, it's like data stream. Some would come through solutions that we deployed. Some would come through solutions that vehicles already have, and we are just collecting all these feeds and creating insights which are not helping just them but everyone in the ecosystem, right? So yeah.
Okay. So, like, when did this realization come that data is like the oil here that you're mining?
So I think, fairly early in our journey, as we started realizing that this is not going to be a software only play, right? And there is this entire ecosystem that we're going to ultimately end up building, right? And also because, like you rightly said, it is a price sensitive market. So we actually also actively started thinking about, hey, what else is it that this could ultimately evolve into, right? And that's when the realization dawned on us as we went deeper into what was going on, especially in developed markets like the US, right? That the data that's getting generated from fleet management or telematics or IoT or whatever you might want to call it, right, was invaluable to insurers, financiers, weather companies, governments, right? Everyone wanted access to this data to mitigate their risk, to better plan their products, to sell better solutions to the end user, right? And so we obviously, started making big plans around how this data could get used in the ecosystem by other service providers. But then again, it didn't work out as it was ideally planned. Because even in our country there were like a bunch of regulations which don't allow all service providers to basically base their decision, finance decision making or insurance decision making on this data. So that change is still coming. But yeah, I mean, we see that over time, as more and more vehicles, commercial vehicles come onto our platform, the dependency for the service providers on us increases as we are able to provide them more insights on how those fleets are running, and what is the ideal or the best product for their fleet. In fact, now in a lot of parts of the world, financiers, insurers, tire manufacturers, etc., are now mandating an IoT device at the time of purchase of the solution, right? Because they want to keep a view on how it's being used. They want to keep a view on what's the risk, etc.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So tell me about your go-to market. Like you figured out a hardware software solution.
Mhm.
I'm sure Vidit would have created the application part of it and figured out the hardware. So how did the go-to market happen? How did you like get your first customers on board,
Right.
and tell me about that process of
Yeah. So
actually going from 0 to 1.
correct. So go-to-market has evolved drastically over the last few years, as it does, I guess, for most young companies. So initially, our go-to-market was two-pronged. One was to build so now, because I came from a background of distributing or distribution of products, right? I thought, why don't we go make resellers, right? And why don't we go create distributors or dealers who will sell this for us in the local market, who might already be catering some other product to local fleet owners. Maybe they're tire dealers, maybe they're something else,
Hmm,
right?
hmm, hmm,
So that was
hmm.
one part of
And they would sell like the hardware software both,
yeah.
like they would
Yeah,
sell
yeah.
a
So
device with a
correct.
annual
So it
subscription.
was just one bundle that came, right? And then the hardware was the tangible part of it, right? And then of course when the device got installed, the product went live, and as it's
And it was easy to install. Like say you could buy it from a auto parts dealer, and that auto parts dealer would install it.
yeah. So it required some early training, but typically someone who was already catering to commercial vehicles, had some mechanic or someone who could do it.
Right,
Right?
right, right. Install it.
Yeah, install it, right. So I think initially the strategy was two pronged: work with resellers or go to enterprises. Right now, in enterprise, what we mean by enterprises is that going to a large FMCG company, a large manufacturing setup, a large cement company, and tell them that, hey, you have these thousands of vehicles moving your goods, right? And you need visibility, right? So why don't you mandate our solution on the fleets that are working with you, and you get visibility, and for them also it's beneficial, right? So one of India's largest FMCG players actually was someone who we initially started piloting with. They liked the product, and in fact, through them is how we got our first customer, right? Because they decided to mandate it on one of their regional setups, in fact in East India, and that's how we got our first two large fleet owners, because the FMCG company told the two fleet owners in that region that, hey, I need this solution and visibility, because till now I've been tracking this data manually. I have analysts who keep tracking turnaround time, but if I have this device, then I can sort of do that through the dashboard, right? And for you also it's valuable, because you will also be able to sort of get real time visibility, etc. So that was
And what was the pricing, hardware and software?
right. So initially, like I said, when we launched in the market, the pricing was anyway fairly on the higher side. So we used to charge about $100 a year per vehicle, right? A little bit less, about $90 a year per vehicle.
For India, that's really steep.
Yeah, that's right, right. But again, because that was mandate was coming through that large FMCG company, right? We didn't feel the pushback early on, right? Because then the fleet owner was like, my customer's telling me to do it. It does. I'll invest in this technology, right? So the first few months we didn't feel the heat, but as we went deeper into the reseller network, and these resellers started selling to like local fleets, right? That's when we realized that we need to there's still a price discovery that's left to be done, right? And then over time, of course, the price has come down a fair bit. But then again, like I said, the goal always has been that how do you democratize access to this technology? Uh, maybe at some point in the future, maybe this technology becomes free, right? And then monetization for us or for companies like us, lies elsewhere. Will definitely lie elsewhere, right? Especially in a market like India, right? So.
Hmm. Right. Okay. Okay. And what was the cost of the hardware?
So, I mean, not the hardware, cost us anywhere between $15-$20. So at that time, now of course, over the years, as we've been able to customize the solution, the scale is a little bit more. So we have hardware built to our requirements at a much lower cost. So.
Okay. And so far, this was self-funded.
Yeah, absolutely self-funded. Then towards the end of 2016, we realized that we will need some capital to scale up. We were pitching to larger institutional investors, but uh, they did not find this opportunity as exciting, and it was probably also a bit early for them to come in. So we were able to put together a small round with angel investors, like quite a small round actually. Again, because no one in India had before raised capital for fleet software. I'd say I think outside of China and in Asia, like no one had really raised capital for fleet software. So for most people, it was like, hey, the problem looks interesting. It's obviously a very large industry. There are many multi-billion-dollar companies that have gotten created in this space in Europe and in the US and now in China also. But these are emerging markets. People won't pay for software. It'll be hard for people to understand what the product does. So we're not sure where this is really going, right? So that was the general pushback from most investors that we met. But we were lucky that we had a few early angel investors who believed in us, backed us, and then
How did you find these angels? Like,
so I think
was it like cold emails
no,
or what? Like,
not cold. Through our network of friends and family, siblings, etc. I think we got introduced to a bunch of people through that. And
do you think that the institutional VCs, the challenge there could also be a pedigree issue? That if you had been, say, IIT, IIM combos, they would have, maybe bet on the combination, figuring things out.
no, I don't think so. See, because I don't think that was the reason. I think that time, there was a wave around other opportunities that institutional investors were more excited about. Fleet software, something that had never raised capital before in India was anyway something that would, invariably look fairly unsexy, right? And or maybe if you were doing like a freight marketplace, there would be more interest, right? But yeah, I don't think that was the reason back then. But yeah, and also I think Akshay, I think fundraising also requires good sort of storytelling skills, right? On what this is ultimately going to turn into, and I think that is also something that Vidit when we were not so great at very early in our journey. So I think maybe if you were better at that, so maybe you would have gotten a VC.
I guess the story itself would have evolved. No, at that time you probably didn't realize the value of the
Correct.
data. At that time, probably you were pitching it as a SaaS, pure SaaS
That's right.
play, that subscription-based
Correct.
revenues.
Correct. So I think it was a bunch of those factors. So yeah. So end of 2016 is when we got some angel investment, and then early 2017 we got one more angel investor, which kept us going for a few more months, and then towards the second half of 2017 is when larger VCs started showing interest in us because we profitably gotten a reasonable amount of traction. We had a few thousand vehicles on the platform using us, some marquee names using us. Uh,
And that pricing was that $90 only, or
by
by
that
that
time,
time you
actually, the
had brought
pricing had
it down?
probably fallen to about $60, right? Plus, there was also the reseller model. So, a little bit average end user pricing was about $60, but average would probably for us would be about $45-$50, right? So I think so. There by then, I think there was just general intrigue that okay, guess this is a large opportunity globally, and at some point, fleet owners in India will also start using this, and it seems like these folks have figured something out here. If they've been able to scale up with such limited capital, the product looks great. So I think. Also around that time, what helped was in the US, Samsara and Keep Truckin' were really coming up. Samsara, I think, just raised a large round from Andreessen. So in general, like globally, there was some more excitement around the whole fleet software space.
So when was your first institutional round, and how much did you raise in
The
that?
first institutional round was in end of 2017, and this was a $3.5 million investment by Sequoia.
And like subsequent to that, like take me through that entire fundraise journey. So once Sequoia came in, then how did that change your trajectory? How did you use?
Yeah, so once Sequoia came in, then we were less stressed at the time of payroll or salary payments, right? Because we had money in the bank, right? Which every month, every big first week of every month used to be a bit of a struggle, right? But yeah, I mean, I think at a more strategic level, we could invest in engineering, we could invest in tech and product, folks that we just could not afford to hire before, except a few people, who took the chance to come and work with us at very low salaries, right? And we were very lucky that very early in our journey we had a few people who believed in us and believed in what we were doing. So I think the first investment was primarily made around tech, product, and engineering, basically. And then, of course, it also gave us the firepower to double down and expand our sales team, right? To go out there to meet more enterprises. Yeah. Also, by then we realized the reseller strategy was not super scalable in the way we were doing it. So then we were like, why don't we just build a large team ourselves, a large sales team ourselves, who's going to go directly to the fleet owner and sell, right? So then, we started investing in building a large sales team. And then, of course, we also had to invest in operations and customer support team that would, support that sales infrastructure. So.
And meanwhile, with it, what was like the product journey happening as from 2016 till about when the Sequoia fund started getting deployed? And
so I think from the product side, lots and lots of different kinds of users came on the platform in one go. There was someone who had 2,000 trucks. There was someone who was sitting out of Chhapra and had one truck. Right? So because they were resellers also, they were enterprise sales also. We were also investing in building industrial products, since it was very closely linked, because largely the technology, the core platform, is something which can power lots of manifestations.
This was post Sequoia or even pre Sequoia?
This started 15 days after demonetization hit. So that's probably first January 2017. So pre Sequoia, but then it wasn't at a very big scale. So we launched our own wallet on the app that a fleet owner could use, and it was the first time when fleet owner remotely pushed money to a driver. Otherwise, just imagine you are doing a Delhi to Bombay trip. It's a 6-day trip, back and forth, and then you have to give all the money on day zero. Now you had the power to push it real time, and then there wasn't any working capital blockage that was happening.
But how did the drivers use that money? Like if it came on a Loconav wallet, how would you use it?
Yeah, so there was a card that you gave to the driver, and that card could be either swiped at an ATM or swiped at a toll, or anywhere. So that happened. So there were so many things that were yeah.
This is like a fintech in itself, no? Like this card for employee expense, and I mean there are like Happy is a fintech which does only this.
Sure.
Like so how did you?
So see, we were not building these solutions. That's the whole point, right? So we were partnering with people, right? So I think probably, and not just in services, also in products. So just think of any GPS company. it has probably, let's say, 5,000 vehicles, sitting somewhere in, let's say, some part of South India, let's say, right? So it's pretty restricted. It's a local area network of 5,000 vehicles, which does not have access to the best technology, you know. So I think that problem statement remains the same for us. I mean, it was the same on day one when we started Loconav, that you need to democratize the access to the best technology and the best service to a fleet owner who could be sitting anywhere in the world, right? So how do you do that? You can only do that by first bringing them on the platform, and then opening up your platform to more and more services and products. What they lack access to is the access to the users, and more than that, access to the right users, uh, right? So I think that is what we're solving, and now we're solving it internationally. Internationally, it's a bigger problem. So how do you make software available to someone sitting out of Kenya? And there is an Israeli company which has built a really great uh, engine diagnostic product. But how do you make that available to someone sitting out of Kenya, right? So and then at the right price, and for that developer to maximize their income also, right? So something like a Play Store, which does not only give you product, they also give you service. So they give you uh, a game application also, but they also give you an Uber, which is a service, right?
Okay. Super interesting. So your version one product was probably just something which was taking location data and showing it real
That was
time
version
live on a
one,
map.
which started in
And
July 2016, but then demonetization hit in December 2016. So in 6 months, it became a fintech product also, right? So, and we kept making it more and more vertical as we went ahead. So I think it was a great year of like everyone was probably working 2x their pace and everything. We were trying to convert every possible customer who had any link to a commercial vehicle. So it could be so we're not just working with trucks, right? So it could be a tractor also, it could be a taxi also, it could be a school bus, it could be an ambulance, right? Any vehicle which runs for a P&L, right, is going to take advantage of this technology. And as I said, it's the core technology that sits at the center, which revolves around a vehicle as an atom. And then there could be possible manifestations of this product. So there could be a product which manifests into a cement use case, which manifests into a last mile use case for example.
just just describe to me how that how the stack or these things that you kept plugging in, how they were happening. Like what were the things that you were plugging in one by one? Like a wallet is
Yeah.
something you plugged in, then just
Sure. So,
talk me through
so
that
let's say
evolution.
we plugged the wallet first, right? Now, so many things could be plugged to the wallet also. So there could be a toll fast tag system. There could be expense management system. There could be, the other purchases that you do. If you want to buy tires, or if you want, there are loyalty fuel card programs that the fuel OMCs run. So they could also be attached. So and we're talking about 40 lakh rupees per vehicle per year. So it's like huge amount of money. Uh, then take a step further, and you start integrating with their ERPs. Obviously, the smaller ones won't have an ERP, but when you
Right. For them, you are the
yeah,
ERP basically.
absolutely. But then there are people. If you go beyond, let's say, 30 vehicles, 25, 30 vehicles, there's typically an ERP in place, and some data is being stored there. It's obviously not real time, but there's something there. So you start exporting that, and dhire dhire you start bringing all their employees on the product, right? So how do you solve that? So start working on that. Yeah.
So like a login for a driver, a login for an
Absolutely.
accountant,
So for the
like that.
finance team, the finance team would manage the wallet. There's fleet managers who will speak to the driver, so all the communication happens there. They start creating routes.
So like you integrated chat
Yeah.
also in it, like.
So I think here probably WhatsApp was something that was fairly important. So we use WhatsApp. Uh, Tried to make the product more passive than being active, right? So how do you make that passive? uh, so that a single fleet manager could manage more vehicles, right? So if right now they're managing, let's say, 8 vehicles, how do you make them manage 25 vehicles, right? So that was a very big problem statement for us. Then now if you're owner of that fleet, so you don't want to get into ops. So what should be the view that goes out to the owner, right? And so yeah, so I think that kept happening, and then obviously around resellers also. So what should you show to your resellers if they also want to see something? uh, and then obviously they were on the product side. Yeah,
What would a reseller
sure.
want to see?
So
Like,
see,
I mean, what does he care? He sold the product,
yeah,
he's got his
so
margin.
see, again, resellers would not just be pure resellers, they could also be OEMs. They could also be people who make consumables, mobile
Like,
oils, right? Yeah.
car dealers basically, right?
Car dealers, right? So
Very
they also
often
want
car
some kind of
yeah,
engagement. Yeah.
very often car dealers want to deploy this because they want to track when is the next maintenance due, right? So that they can reach out for more business, right? Or very often a financer or insurer wants to deploy it because they want to track. Financiers actually very actively do this because they want to track the risk with the moving asset. So
Yeah. There was one meeting with one of the banks. I won't say their name, and there was this very big fleet. I won't say the name again. Based out of Delhi, which had probably 2,000 vehicles, 2,000 commercial vehicles, and they defaulted on probably 1,500 of them in a matter of a year or something. And 6 months before the bank knew, we knew that they are going to default, and that was because
How did
we
you
were
know that?
tracking what mileage they were doing, right? So they, like, literally they stopped running, right? Now that visibility was with us. The bank didn't have that visibility, right? And I was telling the story to the same bank in Bombay, and see, it could be a very small signal, but then it really could de-risk you from a very big. And we're talking about a truck that probably cost 25 lakh rupees. It's not a car, right? So yeah, so even that small signal could probably help you diminish your risk.
So these financiers would essentially again act as uh, people who mandate it rather than your actual paying customer. Like they would mandate it, and then the customer would have to
it
buy it if he
depends.
wants the loan.
Financiers typically try to get the customer to invest in it. So it really depends. Like there's no clear way around.
And when did you like? So fintech was one major addition you did. What else was there? Like, did you also start offering other kind of services and products on the platform, like say, like
Yeah,
buying tires as a use case, or like the servicing of the truck, and like tell me
correct.
about that
Yeah, so
evolution.
we did
Like
actually temporarily launch a tire marketplace, which prior to COVID we had to sort of close down because we decided to sort of pick it up again once we were at a little bit more scale, right? But yeah, again, the idea was, there are fleet owners on our platform who regularly need to replenish their tires, and we were also trying to identify how we could use, that data with the data of the telematics device, right? So that we could feed back to them. Okay, that the life of the tire is 100,000 kilometers. It's already run 30 or 35,000, right? Plus, trying to work with resellers and OEMs, trying to figure out how we could build some kind of technology around that visibility as well, right? In fact, as we speak right now, we're working with this tire tech company in the US, where we're trying to build a product together around helping fleet owners better track the life of their tires, ensure that there's optimum performance, there's sort of minimum deterioration of the tires, right? So yeah, so tires was one thing we did. And then, of course, there are a lot of other experiments we ran. We ran experiments around fuel cards. We ran experiments with, used vehicle marketplace. So yeah, most of these things.
okay, Are these all running, or like tell me
Right.
about the
So I think
results of
many
each of
of
these?
them,
Like,
I think what's running well right now is say the payment solution. So FASTag, for example, the toll payments, right? Then we also work with certain I would say companies who want to want like data insights around what's going on with the assets that they've mandated the solution on, right? So right now, Akshay, we're more focused honestly on zeroing down on getting a larger number of folks on the platform, right? Because on the core platform, because we know that the marketplace is something that we've tried, experimented, and it worked out successfully, and some products live today. But the focus right now is, I mean, the value of telematics is across pretty much anything that a commercial vehicle owner needs to consume today, whether it's finance.
what do you mean by
Telematics is this
telematics?
kind of data is basically called telematics, right? But the data that gets generated from an IoT device on the vehicle, right, is valuable to pretty much any service provider to that commercial vehicle owner today, right? So the idea is that we realize long term that's going to be a no brainer expansion for us. Right now, the goal is to just zero down and expand on getting the software out there in as many fleets as possible.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Okay, okay, okay. Got it. Okay. So, tell me about going global. Like, when did
So
that
we've
start
been thinking
happening?
about global since 2019. Honestly, no one had expected something like COVID to happen. So in the end of 2019, we actually
One quick question. So, 2019, you had another round also, or it was still that
no in
Sequoia
early
round which was
2019
going
we
on?
raised another round, which was again led by Sequoia, and we had another investor join. And then end of 2019, that was
How much was that?
little. That's about $6 million, right? Yeah. Uh,
Hmm. Okay. There's like a Series
Series A
A.
plus. Yeah. So yeah. So yeah. So then end of 2019, we started thinking about going global. We had reached out to folks in Southeast Asia, visited the market as well. We had done a fair amount of work. We were ready to launch in early 2020. But then, around February, as quarantine started getting announced, so we obviously had to sort of pull back on all those plans. Plus, the idea was also to time it along with the fundraise, right? And then, of course, because of COVID, business took a hit, so even those plans had to sort of be put on the back burner temporarily. So then, through the lockdown, I think we were just sort of waiting for things to get back to normal. But while we were doing that, we started thinking hard about, without traveling, how is it that we can, launch in global markets? And that's when we were like, okay, why don't we just take a completely different strategy? We won't, launch the same. We won't sort of use the same GTM as India. We will actually use a purely reseller model, right? Why don't we, because we can't travel, why don't we remotely make resellers across all these markets? The software is relevant to fleet owners anywhere in the world. Maybe we'll have to sort of just build some language capabilities and some other regional nuances to the platform, but it's 80% ready, right? Or maybe some local server capabilities, right? So I think that's when we took a slightly different strategy where we said, okay, let's just go partner with folks and in emerging countries, who are already in the business of catering to fleet owners. Could be like could be anything, right? They could already be selling some kind of transport ERP, or maybe selling parts, services, etc. Right? And so we started doing that, right? Or maybe they're already in the business of selling fleet software and are looking for a better solution to resell. So we started doing that. Started with Africa, Southeast Asia, and initially, and of course, also because of COVID, right? It took some time for folks to build trust, sign up. But once they started using the product, once they started getting great feedback from the users, so today, we're at a point where we have over 100 active resellers across maybe 30 countries, right? And now with travel also opened up, so we're actively going to these countries and also sort of looking at other hybrid GTMs where in certain countries we'll launch ourselves. We won't take the reseller strategy. So yeah, so this effort started, I'd say, in about Q3 2020, and the first 5-6 months were hard again because a lot of these countries were themselves grappling with COVID. There were very, India still had a short lockdown. There were countries that were in lockdown for 7, 8 months at a stretch, right? So yeah, but then I think by Q2 this year, things started coming back to normal. So folks who wanted to sign up and were held back because of COVID restrictions, they started using the product. So now, and then around the same time, we also raised our round, expanded our team that's now focused on selling this product globally, and so we're in a great place now. So
Tell me about the most recent round.
so a few months ago, we raised a round from some great global investors. So Anthemis, which is probably one of the most active and largest insurtech investors, they came on board. Quiet Capital, again, a great investor from the US. They joined. Then we had RIT Capital Partners. We had Uncorrelated, started by Salil, who used to be at Bain Capital. Then Village Global. So, a good set of investors who understand the space, who are global in nature, the ability to also open up a lot of strategic doors for us as we scale into new markets. Lots of learnings also from them because of their experience in investing in this industry or related industries. And yeah, so we were lucky to have had their support to back us. And it was a $37 million round.
This episode of Founder Thesis podcast is brought to you by Long Haul Ventures. Long Haul Ventures is the long haul partner for founders and startups that are building for the long haul. More about them is at www.longhaulventures.com.